Good morning, everyone. Dr. Frankie Bashan here, and I am again here on a Thursday with you all. Happy to be here. I'm going to cover a topic that is one that is really important to consider, which is how do you get closure after a bad breakup? At this point, most of us now know what it's like to experience a breakup, to feel in the dumps over somebody and trying to figure out what to do next. How do we get over it? What's the best, healthiest way to go about getting over it? Um, and yeah, so let's just jump in today. So, how do you get closure after a bad breakup? Whether it's making tearful plans to meet for coffee, 5-hour long processing conversations, or stalking someone's social media and internet presence compulsively, many of us have found ourselves fixated on how to get closure after things end with a partner. We may be disoriented after a breakup that seemed to come out of nowhere, or feel like big questions of the relationship were left unresolved. So, what's the best way to approach this desire for understanding and closure after a bad breakup? And what does closure mean? Often, when we talk about wanting closure from a relationship that's ended, we're coming from a place of confusion, disorientation, loss, and distress. According to a professor of interpersonal communication, closure ultimately is an understanding and acceptance that a relationship has ended and often includes a rationale for why it's ended. We may be fixated on the idea of closure when a relationship ended for reasons that don't feel clear to us, or when a breakup seemed to come out of nowhere. Maybe a partner broke up with us for reasons that we find hard to believe, or even ghosted us. The desire for closure usually speaks to the desire to understand what really happened or why we're in the position we're in. A sense that we'll be able to accept this change better if we have more or more accurate information. Occasionally, our desire for closure is based in something we feel a need to share, a grievance, or to air, or final words about how unfairly you were treated that you wanted your partner to hear, even if they aren't going to address your feelings. When we talk about closure, we're usually imagining a process that will somehow make it easier to move on from a painful and difficult experience that feels senseless. There are a lot of contexts in which this can be true. For example, it can feel enormously helpful to get a medical diagnosis that explains challenging symptoms you've been experiencing, even if it doesn't necessarily mean the symptoms will be relieved. There are some contexts, though, where more information won't alleviate the pain we're in. Sometimes there is no new knowledge that will make the reality of the situation more bearable. It's very common and human to pursue some form of closure, but it's also important to be prepared for this eventually if you do choose to do so. Do you need to talk to your ex directly to get closure? Maybe the most popular shared imagination of getting closure involves a direct conversation. Your ex agrees to meet, maybe in a neutral or public place over coffee. You get to ask them questions or share your experience of events face to face. In the fantasy, they answer your questions freely and transparently. Maybe they confirm long held anxieties in a way that make you feel less crazy, like admitting that they really did have the hots for their coworker the whole time. Or maybe they manage to alleviate your anxieties and tell you that the breakup was a result of their own failings and personal frailties, that they're going to join in a celibate religious order to work on themselves, and that there was nothing you could have done in the end. Of course, while these things are certainly possible, it's not necessarily like you'll hear any of them. It's not guaranteed that you'll be able to talk, have a conversation actually at all. If your ex does agree to sit down and talk with you, either a week or 6 weeks or years after the breakup, they could just as easily be defensive, evasive, accusatory in ways that make you feel worse. Maybe you want an apology and your ex may refuse to give you one. There's no guarantee that they'll actually have anything different to offer than they did during the breakup itself, especially if you're having this conversation in the weeks immediately following. It's entirely possible your ex could say something in your closure conversation that will leave you feeling worse than you started out with feeling. Sometimes the other reason you may genuinely not have or be able to articulate the information you want, maybe you've convinced they broke up with you because of unresolved issues about their mother, and that just you want to hear them admit this to you. But the reality is they may go their whole life without reckoning with those psychological realities. This isn't to dissuade you from reaching out to your ex, but to suggest you get clear with yourself about what you want from it and how likely that is to happen. What could your ex say that would genuinely be helpful to you? What will the impact be for you if they don't say it? And how will you deal with that? What if something about the interaction is genuinely hurtful or upsetting, or the information you're hoping to get just doesn't exist? Is it enough for you to say something to them and witness them having to hear it? Working to really understand your motivations and what you're looking for as far as closure can really be helpful to clarify what will help you most. What's preventing you from feeling closure or acceptance now? Is there any way to address it on your own? So, how does moving on really work? We tend to imagine breakups as a singular, discrete emotional event that you move through relatively quickly and get over. In reality, especially for significant relationships or relationships that brought up a lot of emotional, that are very emotional, the experiences might be more similar to what we know as a loss or a grief. A major part of our life has changed in irreversible ways that were out of our control. An important person and the part of our life we shared with them is no longer present in the same way. If we were grieving something like the loss of a loved one, we wouldn't necessarily expect ourselves to be able to move on entirely. And we probably wouldn't expect understanding it better to make our pain go away. At least, I hope not. While it's totally normal to want to fully understand every aspect of the painful experience you went through, understanding the process of grieving loss is gradual and natural. It's a gradual process that may help you let go of the idea that you should be over your breakup already and could get there if you only had all the info. When you think back about the difficult experiences you have been able to move on from, in most of them, you likely didn't come by a new revelation or a secret knowledge that recontextualized it. You likely brought a new perspective on your own thanks to the growth and change you'd experienced over time. It's not impossible to experience closure after a bad breakup, but it may be a result of living your own life until it doesn't have to have such a strong hold on you. Not anything your ex can actually give you. That's what I got for you today. So hopefully it gives you something to think about. If you know somebody that would benefit from hearing my message today, please share it. If you're new to my channel, please subscribe. And for those of you that have subscribed, thank you so, so much. And I will see you all next week. Kisses, hugs. Take care, everyone.